Are you tired of being nice? Don't you just want to go ape shit?
Giant monsters have captured the imaginations of people for decades, from the movie screens to the screens you can fit in your pocket. Their sheer size, their unimaginable power, they are the kind of beasts that would strike fear into ordinary men. Basically, you don't want to ever find yourself facing such a monster. But what would you do if you were a giant monster? Well, I'm no gambler, but I'm willing to bet that there are at least some people out there who would want to take out some frustration on anyone and anything in their path. Or maybe destroy an AI center or three. Well, in 1986, Bally Midway gave people the chance to live out their most destructive fantasies with the arcade classic Rampage. A 3-player stride of mayhem across North America, Rampage is the kind of game that exists mainly as a power fantasy. But it's a damn fun power fantasy that's managed to endure as a staple of the old days. And today, we're going to take a look at what made this game so goddamn appealing. And its attempt to make a franchise out of it. Get ready, folks! Science is about to go horribly wrong again. So, funny thing about Rampage. It was basically conceived by a couple of people who weren't fans of arcade games at the time. The main duo was artist Brian Cullen and programmer Jeff Nauman, supported by artist Sharon Perry, game tester Jim Belt, and composer Michael Bartlow. And seeing that he and Nauman weren't really into arcade games at the time, Cullen wanted to create a game where there was no wrong way to play. Yeah, the standard conventions like having explicit objectives, going for a high score, and dying weren't really things that Cullen wanted in his game. Yeah, that's kinda hard for an arcade game, especially given the limitations at the time. In fact, the idea of destroying buildings came about because of one of those limitations. They were only able to move rectangles in the background. The dust clouds also covered up glitchy animations, and the 3 monsters were palette swaps with different heads. As for what inspired the monsters, obviously it was giant monster movies. Specifically, Cullen took inspiration from 1933's King Kong and 1957's 20 Million Miles to Earth. And not Godzilla, as a lot of people originally thought. Not only would Godzilla have been too large to adapt for what the team was going for, but Cullen preferred the films of Ray Harryhausen and Willis O'Brien over Japanese tokusatsu films like Godzilla. For a while, the initial management at Bally Midway pushed back hard against Rampage, given that players were playing the role of city-destroying monstrosities. But a change in management changed everything for this game, and Rampage eventually released in August of 1986 using Midway's MCR3 arcade board. So let's pop a quarter in the slot and start this baby up! So here's the story. 3 ordinary average humans ended up mutating into giant monsters through various scientific impossibilities. George was mutated into a giant gorilla after taking an experimental multivitamin. Lizzie was transformed into a giant lizard creature after being exposed to a radioactive lake, and Ralph became a giant wolf man due to a bad food additive. I do not want to get into the politics of all that. Cullen based the character's human portraits on himself, his wife Ray, and Nauman. But that's all just some background to explain why these monsters are on the warpath destroying everything that they can. You have 2 buttons, one to jump and one to attack. Every level covers a different day of the monster's warpath in a given city. The object of each level is to climb onto the buildings and smash them until they crumble to the ground. You can also smash vehicles for bonus points, and various people and objects can appear in the windows. Oftentimes, eating civilians will restore your life when you get damaged. And considering your hitbox is so big, you will get damaged. Whether it's from soldiers, helicopters, tanks, dynamite, or accidentally dropping off a building instead of jumping, you're gonna get hit once in a while. And once you run out of health, your monster demutates and...
Good grief, he's naked!
If you continue, your monster will either remutate or fly back on screen on a blimp with the name Scum Labs on it. Other objects appear in the windows as well. Sometimes it's food to heal your damage meter. Other times, they're hazards that can damage you as well. And with other items, you need to be careful when you grab them. As far as crushing those buildings, you can either punch straight forward, straight up, or diagonally down to smash max your routine. Jumping on top of a damaged building will also weaken it further. After every few levels, you'll get these flavorful headlines to break up the action further. It's a nice little touch. The monster's very enthusiastic walk takes them across the US and Canada over a loop of 128 days, with days accumulating over a total of 4 loops. And for the record, I mapped out the monster's route. This is what it looks like.
How are they even able to? Oh yeah. Blimp.
Even with the huge number of levels in the game, Rampage was a hit in arcades, and one of Bally Midway's last big hits before being bought out in 1988 by Williams Electronic Games. Perhaps the biggest reason for this was kind of obvious. The whole game, as I've said before, was one big power fantasy, not to mention a way to vent some frustrations. I mean, sometimes you just want to smash everything, and this game lets you do that without having a warrant put out for your arrest. Just the idea of crushing entire cities as a giant monster? Certainly that's appealing to a not at all small sector of people. The gameplay loop is especially satisfying when there are 3 players, because then it turns into a frantic smash for all. Aside from the rec room appeal, however, is just how cartoonish the whole thing is. I mean, the heads of the monsters are comically big in proportion to their bodies, and they're pretty expressive when it comes to how they react to their environment. Heck, when they fall off of a building, they cover their eyes like Wile E. Coyote. Not to mention, the buildings have quite a bit of detail to them as well, from various stages of window opening, to neon signs you can smash with good timing, bridges, manholes, and all sorts of stuff. And being a game of the time, it was also ported to multiple gaming platforms and computers at the time. Most notably, there were ports to the NES, Atari 2600, and Sega Master System. Of these 3, the NES port made the biggest mistake. While the Atari and Master System ports let you choose your monster from all 3, the NES port cut out Ralph. Why? Why would you do that? Now, while the original Rampage was hailed as a classic, you wouldn't think it would be the kind of game to make a franchise out of. But that doesn't mean that they didn't try. You see, in 1992, Colin and Nauman founded an independent studio called Game Refuge.
If you've ever been to the Midwest Gaming Classic that happens every year in Milwaukee, you may have noticed them around.
And in 1997, Midway would tap them to create a remake of Rampage called Rampage World Tour. The game was made on Midway's Wolf Unit arcade board and followed the 3 monsters from the original once again. Only this time, the game gave the monsters a target for their aggression. Remember that blimp from the original? The one that said Scum Labs on it? Well, they're the corporation responsible for these mutants, and they want revenge. And they'll travel the entire world to destroy the evil company, pulverizing everything in their path. The gameplay from the original is changed a little bit. For one thing, your ground speed is noticeably faster, stemming from the fact that the levels are no longer confined to one screen. Also, the layout and moveset has changed a little bit. Now you punch straight down instead of diagonally down, and you can punch the roof to do more damage. You also have another button, this one to deliver a powerful kick to damage a whole floor. You can also find power-ups like a boxing glove to power you up, or purple radioactive waste which temporarily turns you into a super kaiju. And there's a lot more variety in the locations you can visit. Starting from Peoria again, you can travel towards a certain region by smashing a certain billboard. From there, you'll make your way towards cities with ScumLab locations, so you can smash the strongholds of the evil corporation. But this game is called World Tour, and by collecting certain World Tour power-ups, you can travel to other countries and destroy all the ScumLab's facilities in places like Paris, Barcelona, Berlin, and Istanbul, which was Constantinople. Now it's Istanbul, not Constantinople. Been a long time gone, old Constantinople. Why did Constantinople get the works? That's nobody's business, but the ScumLabs. Once you've destroyed all the ScumLabs locations on Earth, there's one last lab to tear down and finish off the evil CEO. On the moon! Now, while World Tour initially got mixed reviews and the 2D gameplay was derided at the time, nowadays I feel like the game would deserve more appreciation than it got. Too bad the PS1 and Saturn ports only had 2-player support.
That's one of the few advantages the N64 had, having 4 controller ports.
2 years later, Rampage would abandon the arcade and become home console exclusive with Rampage 2 Universal Tour. The N64 and PS1 versions were developed by Avalanche Software. Yeah, these were the same people who made the N64 port of Mortal Kombat Mythology Sub-Zero. Not exactly the best of omens, but whatevs. So the ScumLabs monsters were miniaturized and captured following the events of World Tour and have been separated and imprisoned in various places. George in New York, Lizzie in Tokyo, and Ralph in London. And there's the first complaint. Remember how you had to unlock X in Mega Man X7? This is the same goddamn thing! So instead, we start with 3 all-new monsters, those being Boris the Rhino, Curtis the Mouse Monster, and Ruby the Lobster. You start with a cutscene outlining the plot in the form of a news report, text and visuals on the N64 version, and CGI animation on the PS1 port. Then you choose to go to one of 3 continents, America, Europe, and Asia, in an effort to rescue the original monster trapped there. You can tackle each region in any order, and some major cities contain their notable landmarks to contribute to the authenticity of the experience. The music is also generally appropriate for the region, at least on the PS1. They had to cut some of the tunes from the N64 version due to storage issues. As you go through each region, you'll destroy everything in your path basically the same way you did in World Tour. Every so often, you'll try to earn lives and energy in a bonus stage, and eventually, you'll free your fellow monsters and unlock them as playable characters. And eventually, they pull the aliens card. So you drive off the aliens by doing arguably more damage than the aliens ever did. There's a message here somewhere, I just don't know what. And free a captive alien named Mucus from Area 51 before chasing the aliens across the solar system and eventually laying waste to their homeworld.
You don't seem to understand. Earth isn't yours to conquer.
The game got mixed reviews for both versions, mainly for being so similar to World Tour, so in other words, basically your enjoyment of Universal Tour is largely going to depend on whether you liked World Tour, because so much of it is carried over. The graphics are a little less sharp and the music is just okay, but if you still had an itch for destruction, the game still had that to deliver. Also, there was a Game Boy Color port done by Digital Eclipse, and yeah, the system's limitations are on full display here. Another sequel would follow in 2000 called Rampage Through Time, exclusively on PS1, developed again by Avalanche Software. This time, the plot picks up with Scum Labs developing a time machine to prevent the monster's rampage before it starts. But of course, the monsters manage to get the drop on the corporation and steal the time machine for themselves so that they can take an extremely enthusiastic walk through various time periods. All 7 monsters return, also joined by a new monster, Harley the Warthog. Wait. Harley? Hog? Okay, I see you, Midway. Once again, the basic gameplay is essentially identical to the previous 2 games. You destroy cities through various time periods, but there's little difference in visuals between the eras, and even less between individual levels. However, there are 2 very, very significant differences that ruin the whole thing. For one, if you're playing the campaign alone, you're joined by 2 AI monsters, and you cannot turn the AI off. This is a terrible design decision, and it's going to get in your way constantly, whether it's causing accidental friendly fire, or preventing the screen from scrolling so that you can't get where you need to go. And the second problem? The 4th stage of each era is a minigame that you have to win in order to complete that time zone. These range from stuff like shootouts, to claiming territory, to homages to classic games like Breakout, Asteroids, and Warlords. And let me remind you, these are mandatory. I'm sorry, but what the f*** does playing Asteroids have to do with Rampage? This game is the rarest of the trilogy, and as such is the most expensive for collectors, but thankfully, this is a title you can probably skip. And apparently Midway wasn't done with Rampage yet. In 2006, they tapped developer Pipeworks Software to give Rampage yet another reboot, this time with Rampage Total Destruction for the GameCube, PS2, and Wii. This time, the mutations have been caused by an apparently radioactive soda developed by Scum Labs. Once again, the concept is unchanged. Crush buildings, eat bystanders, destroy everything, and move on to the next block. This time, however, you have 3D movement, and buildings exist on more than just a single plane. Some buildings are in the background, while others are in the foreground. There are a few new gameplay hooks as well, one being the fact that you can finally grab onto the front of buildings and smash them that way. This helps for longer buildings. Next is the challenges. If you grab a certain number of a certain item in a level, you'll unlock an upgrade for the monster that you're playing as, and you can switch monsters between levels. There are also power-up modes like Rampage Mode and the Roar Power, which you power up by performing well throughout the levels. But at the end of the day, it's just more Rampage. And I mean a lot more. There are a total of 30 playable monsters in the game, 40 in the Wii version. There are also a couple of multiplayer modes, King of the City, where players try to dominate the most districts, and King of the World, which is King of the City across multiple cities. Now, this game was panned by critics, who largely said that the game got monotonous fast. In spite of this, however, it did sell relatively well, selling over 1 million units, with the GameCube version earning Player's Choice status. Sadly, this was the last game in the series to be published by Midway before they got folded into Warner Brothers, and the last on home consoles. From there, Rampage would wind up as part of more than a few retro collections until 2018, when Warner Brothers brought it back. But not in the way anyone expected. They made a movie loosely based on the game starring Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. And while I can't say for myself whether or not the movie's any good, I have seen that the reactions from others have been kinda mixed. But that's not the point here. The point is, as part of marketing the movie, they made another arcade game, loosely based on the movie, developed by Adrenaline Amusements Incorporated.
Yeah, we have Rampage the game, the movie, the game. This is like when they made games based on the Street Fighter movie.
So, aside from the game taking place entirely in Chicago, this is the same style of gameplay as it's always been. Actually, it's more simplified Rampage since there's only one button for smashing. Yep, they took out the jump for this one. Not to mention, from the way it looks, you can tell it was made with Unity. But what actually bugs me about this third reboot is what it was made for. The game was originally made exclusively for Dave & Buster's locations. So you might be able to guess what that means. Yup, it's a ticket redemption game. You build up tickets as you smash up buildings and devour innocent bystanders, and the ultimate goal is to collect chemicals to build your evolution meter until it maxes out and you hit the jackpot. But mostly, there are some other redemption adaptations of classic games that do the whole thing better. Also, there was a puzzle game spin-off on the Game Boy Advance back in 2001 called Rampage Puzzle Attack, but that's a clone of a game called Dropmania, and I'm kinda glossing over this one. So, what's the big takeaway from all this? Well, probably that not all formats have the staying power to be lasting franchises. The original Rampage? That's a classic, especially if you have friends to cause a rumpus with and aren't trying for completion. But you can only do so much with a game where the objective is smashing buildings. It's not like a game like Mega Man or Castlevania where level design or boss battles contribute to the experience. With Rampage, the gameplay is something that lends itself better to one game than an entire series. And that shows with the majority of Rampage's sequels and reboots. There's a reason why so many more people remember the original Rampage, and to a lesser extent, World Tour. But if you're looking to feel powerful, or just want to vent off some frustration, the classic Rampage may be just the kind of game you're looking for.
And of course, there are plenty of ways to play it, considering the number of collections it's ended up in. That is, if you're not interested in emulation. And if any of you know a good kaiju movie, feel free to drop a recommendation. I'm the Quarter Guy, and until next time, the arcade is closed.
Hey there everyone, QG here. If you liked the video, please like, subscribe, hype the video, and help share it around. Feel free to check out my live streams on Twitch or follow me on Blue Sky. If you want to help me out, you can become a channel member on YouTube or support me on Patreon. And check out the pinned comment for my current fundraisers. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.